to sleep with your head in the wrong position is a pain in the neck. You deserve Tausi Comfort for head, neck, and back support. Go to tausibrands.com and get your comfort on.
How about that?
Yes.
That's pretty awesome. We got a theme song, Kim. How about that?
I love it, ladies. Love it.
I wanted to, before we get started, Kim, Cindy and I have a couple of announcements that we want to make, and then we will get right to you. But Cindy and I are super excited to let you guys know that this has been a good week.
It's been a good week.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. So last week we won an award. It's called the Legacy Award, and it's from, there it is. And it is from our Area Agency on Aging. And we are always, we're always plugging the area agencies on aging. They're always a wealth of information. If you don't know who yours is, you need to find out, because you need to get involved with them. They have a lot of resources for not only for loved ones and seniors, but also for the caregivers that care for them.
Yeah. And we're going to, we just are really proud of this. So we're going to just show it one more time.
Yeah.
It's kind of heavy. It's really pretty. I'm proud of it. Okay.
Yeah.
We can move on.
We're both really proud of it. The other big announcement that we had this the beginning of this week, we hit 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. Yay! We're so excited about it. It's been a labor of love.
Yes.
Because what we always say is what Cindy and I do is not sexy.
No.
And so we started off on YouTube, and we knowing that what we do isn't sexy. And so we will never, very rarely ever go viral.
Right.
And so it's been, short of me catching one of us falling down or, something really major. We don't fight Mike Tyson, and, we don't give out, millions of dollars and knock on people's doors or run trains into big holes. So what we do, but we feel it's important to get that out there. So that 50,000 subscribers has been since we started in 2015 on YouTube.
Yes. So it's been
it has been a slow
momentum.
slog. Yes. Yeah. But we're super excited about it. So if we would love your support to go to any of our social media channels and like and subscribe.
Yep. Follow
us and share it. Maybe it's not for you, but make sure you share it with somebody.
And share your comments, share your experiences, because everybody learns from everybody. So
we get some really great questions, and a lot of times those questions on our social media accounts will drive the very next video. So or the next few videos. So make sure that you comment. So having said all that, we thank you guys for your support and everything. So we are going to get right into it. And today we're thrilled to have Kim Burgess, the owner of Comforting Transitions, LLC. Kim is a seasoned healthcare professional with a unique blend of expertise in adult geriatric nursing and end-of-life care. She has over 25 years in the medical field, and Kim has dedicated her career to providing compassionate and comprehensive care to older adults and their families. As an adult geriatric nurse practitioner, Kim specializes in senior care management, ensuring that older adults can maintain their independence and quality of life in the comfort of their own homes. She has a deep understanding of the challenges faced by families caring for aged loved ones, and she offers practical guidance and support in help navigating the complexities of the healthcare system, which can be complex.
Very.
In addition to her clinical expertise, Kim, we're gushing on you. Kim is also an end-of-life doula, and we will get into that a little bit later on in the show, so stay tuned for that. This role allows her to provide emotional and spiritual support to individuals and their families as they navigate the end-of-life journey. With a passion for helping others, Kim is committed to ensuring that individuals receive the care and support they need during this challenging time. Kim, welcome.
Thank you, ladies.
We're so happy to have you.
Yes.
Kim, we've run, so Kim and Cindy and I all are in the same community. So we live in the same community in Illinois. And so we've run into Kim at several caregiver events or senior events. So we've actually done some, we've talked a lot. And so I thought, this would be a really great, she'd be really great for our podcast.
That's
so
right.
Kim came on the
Thank
show, and we are super excited to have her. Kim,
Yes.
welcome.
Yay! Thank you. You guys, this is something that, when I went into nursing way back in 2000, 2001, and kind of worked at big barns in St. Louis for a while. And then you kind of realize, okay, that's not my area that I enjoy.
Right.
But there's so much you could do with nursing. And this is why I do tell people who are in high school looking for something to do, so many different things. I mean, I taught an LPN class for a while. I did a lot of stuff until I found my true passion, and kind of the same with you ladies, right? It's trying to find, where do you enjoy? And I did home care, and seeing those individuals in their own setting where they're happy, they're comfortable, they feel secure. It just made a world of difference. And that was kind of where I put myself for 17 plus years.
Yeah. Was there something in particular when you found home care? Was there something in particular that kind of inspired you to go and start your own business and do what you're doing now?
That was basically that I still found a big gap in healthcare. I felt okay after being a 17-year plus in the home health as a registered nurse. Maybe it was me being a nurse practitioner. Maybe I could do more. So I went to Maryville University, got my adult-geriatric nurse practitioner degree, took my boards, never want to do that again, but check, that's done. And then started working as a nurse practitioner. Once again, I found my limitations, right? I'm writing scripts, but what's the follow through? I give them advice, but what's the follow through? So there it came to another kind of hole in the medical system. And with my knowledge of the home health and seeing, what home situations sometimes look like. And I know you guys see this as well, right? Home situations are presented very different than when you're in a physician's office and you're given advice there. And so I figured, there's got to be a way that I can improve the situation altogether. I'm going to take a big leap of faith. And thanks to my husband for allowing me to do so, I quit my full-time nurse practitioner job, launched what I believe is a hole into our medical system, and never looked back. So
that's awesome. That is so cool.
So we're going to get into a little bit later on about being a death doula, which is a new phrase for me. I think I've only been aware of it for a couple of years now. But so was there something, we have lots of stories that we could tell about our home health experience. Was there something in particular, like an experience in particular, especially with the death doula, that got you on that path?
There is. When I was thinking about what am I going to do, how can I improve the need that is out there? And a lot of people don't know what you don't know, right? They don't know what options are available. So it was actually a friend of a friend who called me, and I remember it vividly. It was a Friday afternoon, Easter weekend. And I was out clothes shopping at an outlet mall with my daughter. And he called and he said, we just brought my mother-in-law back to her home after hospitalization. Hospice is coming. And actually hospice just left. She was put on hospice. Hospice nurse was there for hours. She just left. I still am so overwhelmed. I don't know where to turn. I don't know what to do. And I feel alone. And that was the time I said, okay, I'll be there. Right. So, finished up my shopping and went over to their home. And the look on their face of just feeling overwhelmed, that they are the responsible caregivers for their loved one. And as our population is aging, the terminally ill, she was in her mid-90s. And her daughter was in her late 70s, right? Who was just recovering from a total hip replacement a week ago. And they had no children. So they were the only family members. So they were a very, tough situation. And feeling that burden of responsibility of, we have to give the morphine. When do we give it? How do we give it? How do we turn her? Every time we turn, she screams in pain. I don't like seeing that, And that was my first instance where I'm like, gosh, I've got to do something about this, because they can't be the only family out here feeling this. And that's even with hospice support. Hospice is fabulous and wonderful. But again, there around the clock.
Yeah.
So.
Right. You know, there are so many challenges like that. And that's kind of where we stepped into also that gap between leaving that skilled or receiving that skilled service. And then bam, it's on the caregiver. You know, there are a lot of challenges, and I feel like that is one of the biggest ones for the family, especially when things change and then there's all this information. They are so overwhelmed.
Right.
It's like, you know, and it's hard for those individuals that are employed, and I'm just going to put it bluntly. You know, when you're employed, there are certain things you have to do. There are time limits that you have, and you know, this is all that, you know, unfortunately, that you can do. And especially when somebody comes home or changes a service, like to hospice, we are there for several hours. We bombard you with information, and then we got to go. Sorry, you know, what can we do? You know, with your business, kind of explain to me. It sounds kind of like you're an advocate. That's your position, as being the advocate, being the person that again fills that additional gap for those caregivers that have just been overwhelmed with all of this information. That's interesting to me, and kind of explain to me how you find your clients and how you let them know that you are out there for this service. And what is this service? Because I just had hospice, or I just had physical therapy. So you know, that you understand what I'm saying?
And that's been my challenge, ladies. It really is. It's letting people know that, because they say, oh, well, I have hospice. And it's wonderful. I actually even support people who are at our local hospice houses or who's in the hospital. So it's not just those, or even assisted living or wherever they may reside. It's not just necessarily at the home, but it is really, and at this point, it's been word of mouth. And once I support a family, the feedback I get for them is, I don't know how I would have done this without you, you know, or, you know, I was able to be the daughter and I didn't have the burden of being a caregiver. Now, granted, I'm not there 24/7. Those years of that for me are over. But what I do is I basically advocate for success. And every family situation is going to be different. There is some people that I've supported, and I've supported about 7 end-of-life cases since February. And so there's a need out there, and some people don't even know there's a need. I basically kind of word of mouth again is, let me meet with you. I'll do a free meet and greet to make sure and explain, you know, what I think I could benefit. But advocacy from the very beginning, and whatever setting is right for them. Again, I advocated for one gentleman who was in the hospital. Hey, you know what? I think you're going to be better served at our hospice house. And I helped arrange and get a bed and get the transfer over there. And then just because I were there, I was still able to support the family, answer those questions. How did we get here? What happened medically that we decided that we needed to do, you know, more of a comfort care at that point. So it's having more and more conversations. Again, as a nurse practitioner, I can tell you, on the other side of things, you get in, you've got 10 minutes, you give them the down and dirty, and then you walk out. And they may need to process that. And then they may need to also have that same conversation an hour or two or the next day. And some of that is just me repeating or spinning it a different way to let them know, so they do understand and everybody feels good about the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and then and you talk about only getting 10 minutes, you know, to talk to the family, and they may need to hear it again in an hour. Not to mention the fact that they need to go through this with their loved one. And find out what their wishes are. What would be your advice? How can families effectively communicate their loved ones' wishes and preferences for care back to you as the care provider?
Yes, I will tell you, I am a big advocate of it's a website called The Conversation Project. It's theconversationproject.org. And that is phenomenal. We could put a link on that. But what that is it gives anybody the start of those conversations? Who do you want involved? Do you want to know all the medical details? Do you not? And it just starts with some of those basic conversations. And that's where the conversations with your loved one should begin. Do you want, how much support at end of life do you want? That then goes into advanced directives and, power of attorney and all the stuff that I advocate for as well. But along with organ or body donation as well. But with that, the very beginning is the conversation project.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So moving into, first of all, let me ask you this. How do families get involved with, what's that first step for a family? Just to at least find out about it. Maybe they're not wanting to take that step.
Yep.
But what's their first step to getting involved with?
And when I started as an end-of-life doula, I could be called death doula. There's so many other words for it. I call it end-of-life doula. But what I really recommend is some people who are not even at that stage of terminal ill, but just want to start building that rapport and that relationship. Oh my gosh, that would be my dream, is for people to contact me ahead of time so I get to know them and their family, what their wishes are. I had one client who did not want to pass at home. And then I had another client who did and didn't even want a hospital bed. They were saying, I don't want any. So it's really getting to even have those basic conversations on what their preference is. Along with that is, if I could get people way ahead of time, it would be nice to, what is your legacy? Do you want to do a legacy project? What does that look like? And there's so many varieties of things that we could do in that regard. And I help with those too. Either videos. I just recently did a video of a 91-year-old who was in a memory care unit. And it was 20 minutes, but he had just talked about his childhood on a cotton farm and what did that look like, and videotape that and the tears that he had talking about his parents. Just talk about moving and touching and how I was able to present that to his daughter. And now she's able to have that. So again, earlier is better, and it could be anything from just getting to know each other with visits once a month, once every 6 months, and and to have that collaboration as we age on.
And so that kind of, I don't know it. And I've seen it, and I'm sure you've seen it too, being in home health and stuff. You see the whole family dynamic sometimes. Well, not sometimes. It almost always plays a role.
Christina,
But emotion, it really does. We had somebody that commented, emotion wreaks havoc, and especially at a time like this. And maybe family members. There might be family members, that are fighting each other.
Right.
How do you handle that? What would be your advice to maybe the family member that has been put in charge of overseeing everything like that?
I love what I do, and I compliment families when they do get along, because they need to know that this isn't necessarily the norm. The more that I've been doing this, and if the families get along and they're on the same page, and I love it, and I make sure that they know that. I've worked with some families that have been difficult in terms of children, getting along and respecting mom's wishes. And with that, I just become the gatekeeper. I am, again, the advocate for that dying person and whatever those wishes are for that person. And, Jimmy might not like it, but mom doesn't want to see Jimmy every day. And I have to put restrictions on that. And I am basically there and will allow for 10 minutes every 3 days or whatever that we agree upon with that person. I do stay in communication via text, email, whatever their wishes are. I don't want to withhold information, but sometimes those visits from their loved ones is not the right time, and unfortunately, I can't heal many years of hurt in just a few days. So once again, I don't withhold information. I do keep them, informed, but those visits, I become the gatekeeper and an advocate for that person.
Right. Kim, with you talking about, and I totally understand the person needs an advocate. How would you handle, and we run into this a lot too, where family members are trying to make the decision of, can I keep them at home or can I not? And that becomes a tricky balance, between being an advocate for the individual, which they may not want to go anywhere, but they really may need that additional care to allow the family member to be just that, the family member.
Yeah, no, Cindy, I think you guys see it as much as I see it as well.
Mhm.
And, we've got to keep those family members who are taking care of their loved one in good health as well, and that does play a part. We kind of go through options. We could hire caregivers through a caregiving service around the clock or as much as they need. Other options is basically also trying to let them know that they have hospice benefits of respite. Their hospice benefit has 5 days of inpatient respite as needed as well for caregiver support. So I always recommend and working with your hospice social worker to get that arranged when the time is needed. And sometimes those visits can turn into what they call GIP, which is general inpatient. And that could be at a hospice house or at a local hospital. Again, working with your hospice social worker, we could get involved. And if it gets to be too much care for the family, then those are 2 options as well that are very, very appropriate based on the situation.
So you mentioned hospice. Maybe now would be a good time to ask you, can you tell us the difference between hospice and then end of life doula? Do they go hand in hand? Is it, hospice, there's so many misconceptions about hospice. I can't even imagine the misconceptions about end of life doula and stuff. But can you tell us the difference between the 2 and then also maybe some similarities?
Yep, absolutely. And I get that question quite often. So are you hospice? Well, no, I'm not hospice, but I work hand in hand with hospice. So this is I can do end of life doula work for people who are not on hospice in terms of, let's start, maybe you have, let's just, for example, pancreatic cancer, right? You have this diagnosis. You still want chemo and you still want curative treatment. And I can be involved and help navigate and guide and also support the family as an advocate through that disease process. At some point, if chemo is no longer working and they do decide to do comfort measures and transition to hospice, at that point, I work then hand in hand with the hospice organization that they're picking. And again, everybody has the right to pick their own hospice company. No matter what hospital you are in, you are able to pick an affiliated with the hospital or an outside hospice. So do your research ahead of time as well on hospice organizations, pros, cons. There's for-profit, there's not-for-profit, there's hospital-based. That's a whole different section in itself, guys. But with that being said, do your research ahead of time on them as well. But hospice is they have their pastoral care, their social workers, their nurses. They have nurse practitioners. In that realm, we want them there to kind of guide. But again, I work that setting. They're in and out in 45 minutes, 2 days a week. Right. And you maybe get a social worker every 3 weeks for a visit to check up on you. Again, every situation is different depending on the signs and symptoms. But they don't have that. I can't say that they don't have that rapport with the family. As a doula, I'm not just there for that person. I am there for every single person in that family and update them every chance that I get. Where again, I think that's very personalized versus a hospice organization. Yep, they put it in the chart, and if you want an update, they may call you. And we'll talk to one person, whereas I inform everybody involved and keep that going.
Right.
So I still want
Wow.
them, and basically as their own personal nurse practitioner in the home with them. Sometimes you could be with a client and go, we really probably need to increase the morphine or their anxiety medicine or whatever on the patient's behalf within them. I will call and just ask the hospice director, hey, can we increase or can we make a medication change? I think this would be best served. And 9 times out of 10, they're absolutely glad that I'm in there to have those assessment skills, but still want to them. Again, it's a collaborative partnership.
That's fantastic.
Right. That's awesome.
And I can be there I had as little as 2 days a week, 2 hours, 2 days a week to anywhere from, I was with a client 10 to 12 hours every day for weeks.
Wow.
So it really just depends on every situation, what their family support is, the location of where they are and such.
Right. And there is a strong misconception with hospice that people think, oh, I'm going to have 24/7 care now. And
all the time.
Not right.
All the time. And if you're not in the medical field, even turning a person, especially a loved one, when there's some pain involved or some agitation or dementia, the confusion starts. And as a loved one, you hate seeing that. And how do you take care of that? And again, you feel all alone. You're always available to call them. Hospice is available 24/7 by phone, but they'll try to support you over the phone and not necessarily always make a visit. So,
wow, that's fantastic. And to hear you say that, Kim, it's so helpful because I think there are a lot of misconceptions about what hospice does first.
Right.
I feel like they might, that at the end of life doula and hospice, even though I didn't know what it was till a couple of years ago, I think they might get conflated and to think that somebody from hospice, a nurse in particular, is going to be there for my loved one. I
get that a lot. Yeah. I get that a lot.
Yeah, I bet you do. So I think that's really important to let people know that there is a difference. We've had a question from the audience, and they were wanting to know just kind of for the end of life doula, what is first of all, we always get, does insurance pay for it?
Of course.
And the second question is get kind of a ballpark idea of what would be the expenses would be to expect from the family.
Yeah, so it is not covered by insurance. And I tell people a lot of times, as a nurse practitioner, could I reach out? Absolutely, in terms of bill through insurance. But I will tell you that I'm working for the insurance and I want to work for you. I've worked for insurance when I did my home health nursing and as a nurse practitioner, and there just is limitations. There's limitations. So it is private pay. I went back about packages versus, it was just simple that I just do an hourly fee. Hourly fee for myself is $150 an hour. But I will tell you, every family that I have associated with has found it absolutely worth every penny. So.
Absolutely. Just something that came to mind, and I don't know, I have no idea, but since you are a nurse practitioner, I'm wondering if if the family could actually get some type of reimbursement from if they had like long-term care insurance or something.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yes, that is the one thing. If they do have long-term care insurance, that is one thing that I can tap into. Yes, that is correct.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. I've seen some end of life care doulas and then also hospice nurses on some of these short, like on YouTube shorts, like TikTok and stuff. And they talk about the experiences that they've had with people as they're passing. Are there any things that you can share with us that stand out with you that maybe to help comfort people and families during this really difficult time?
Yeah, it is. I've been around numerous people as they pass at this time. And, sometimes the best way is just to give examples. And one lovely lady that I was with, and she had this thing, and you might have heard, they say it's called the death rattle. And there's all these secretions that are kind of in the back of your throat and not being able to be processed. And basically, it's awful to hear as a loved one. And the one thing I do want to tell people is it's harder for us to hear than it is for them to feel that. It's everything I read and know about it is that they don't struggle and it's not painful, and it definitely is harder for us to hear. So I always want to keep that in my mind and help support the family by that. There are times as well that there are signs and symptoms, as the hospice nurse will tell them as well. There's things that we can look at as modeling and their breathing and their heart rate and such on when, the time of death is coming near. And there's this one case where I was with a lady and her 2 daughters, and we had been with each other for weeks on end. And it got to be the point where she had the death rattle going now for a while. And I said, okay, maybe mom just really doesn't want you in the room, and let's go ahead and let's consider getting some takeout. We'll step out. Let's just, get a bite to eat for lunch. And I was on my computer and we were putting a takeout order in, and I was having troubles with my computer, trying to get the credit card to accept it. And all of a sudden I looked and I'm like, oh my, I said, girls, get up and hold your mom's hand. This is it, and again, you try to be there to support the daughters, and they would have gone, we had no idea that was mom's, last few breaths, but they were happy to be there, as sad as the situation was. And we joke about it now going, I guess mom didn't want us to have lunch after all. And she didn't want us to leave,
It's more to say.
Right. Yeah, it's just, talk to them. Their hearing is also so very important and available at the end. Comforting music, light touch. I do a lot of gentle massage of the hands and feet, not just for the dying, but for the loved ones as well. I think that's just as important to take care of them. So it's a community effort.
Kim, I'm a speech language pathologist, and we deal with people that have difficulty swallowing, and so there are times maybe a person has a feeding tube, or maybe the family's decided they're in that point where they can't decide whether they want to put a feeding tube in or not. And I have often in my career cited a study that they have where they talked to a bunch of hospice nurses and found out that it was hospice nurses' opinions or feelings that as a person is in the later stages of dying, that they release a natural analgesic or a painkiller when they're in those stages. And so, the family was always like, let's stick a feeding tube in them because we don't starve them and we don't want to dehydrate them. And I would always let them know about that study that said that, starving, or becoming malnourished was one of the less painful ways to go. But the families had such a hard decision to decide whether to put that feeding tube in. And I would let them know that when you put the feeding tube in, the body feels like they have to process. The body has a job to do and to process that. And that could actually make it a little bit more painful. Can you speak to that at all?
Absolutely. And, this kind of goes back to a time, again, I love, just personal stories that I've encountered. I was at one of the local hospice homes and with a client, and I was in the kitchen and getting a refill of my water. And there was another family in there, and they just brought their loved one into the hospice house. And they said, I don't understand why he's not getting IVs. And I couldn't hold it in, it's just a lot of it is education. So I sat and had a good 30-minute conversation, because no one in the medical field at that point had really sat down and had a conversation of what you just said, Christina, is they just have this perception of, oh my gosh, dad hasn't had anything to eat or anything to drink in 3 days, and we need to get something in him. And with that, I just tell them, as our body is starting to shut down and prepare for death, is the cells and the fluid that is needed is no longer needed. And really, because of the cellular exchange, is that given those fluids is actually more feeling like a drowning than anything. And really just the comfort of a moist mouth is with a lot of times you'll see these, sponges that are used, lubricating the lips. Those are the things that are needed when it comes to the end, and fluid is not needed, again, because their body is not able to process it. And then instead of it being processed, it sits into swelling and edema, and then feeling of drowning in the lungs. The same with, eating. Your body's not needing that nutrition. It doesn't have that expenditure. So
Right.
with that, it's, letting that go too.
Yeah. Right.
I tell people, older people's kidneys in itself are not like, when we were younger and active. So their kidneys can't process things. Their bowel can't process things. So it's
Wow.
just, again, having those conversations that, again, I worked 25 years in the medical
Right.
field, and you just don't have time. You're getting those high level needs that you need to
Yeah.
let them know
Right.
about.
Yeah.
And you don't have these, I say simpler conversations, but to them, it's a big deal.
It is. It's a huge deal, and that's what we are all about too. It's so mind blowing that we feel like we give people all this information, but we don't give them education. It's like,
Yes.
here's
That's
all
an
this
excellent
stuff,
point.
but that we don't sit and educate them. I mean,
Yes.
give me.
I always say, you don't know what you don't know.
That's exactly right.
You don't
It's
know what
just
you don't know.
crazy.
Yeah. And you're just throwing all this education at them without just sitting down.
Or just information, because
Yeah.
that's one thing, but to actually educate I mean, who's got time to go through a stack of papers this big?
Right. Especially
Give me the A to B.
Yeah.
Well,
especially
and
at that point in time.
and that's another pet peeve, I've got so many, but you basically, you get into, you get admitted into hospice, or you get admitted into a home health company. They give you this big folder, and you've got to weed out what's really important, what really is not important. And that important stuff gets overlooked because there's so much other just policies and rules and regs and all the stuff that they do legally have to give you.
Yeah.
But in that, then, the important stuff kind of gets overlooked. So,
Right.
yeah.
Kim, can you for family caregivers, can you give us some ideas of what you would recommend a family caregiver would need to do for their own well-being at this point in time during this process? What are some things that a family member can do to help protect their own well-being and mental health?
And I've seen it time and time again. Sleep deprivation for these loved ones is huge. And it's not just those final days, it's months ahead of time, It's a cumulative effect of, I don't want to ask our daughter to come and stay overnight because I don't want to inconvenience her and her family. And then I have conversations with the daughter, and the daughter's like, well, mom and dad haven't asked me yet. It sounds like they're doing okay. So there's instances that I am a third party that comes in and has that mutual relationship that can say, hey, you need to start staying here so your mom can get some solid sleep, because for the last 3 months, she hasn't gotten a good night's sleep. And that affects somebody, So that's where, again, I feel as an end-of-life doula, I can benefit people in terms of having those conversations. They've got these relationships, as a lot of times, these parents who are older and terminally ill, but they still are the authority in the family and waiting for, for signs of having family to come and help out, and the family's waiting for them to say something. So a lot of times I can just kind of call it how it is and have these conversations. Look, your loved one needs some help, and we need to start a schedule, and how can we support them best?
Yeah.
Right.
So, and it's such an emotional time. And I understand what, the family members are afraid to kind of get involved. But is there something that a family member could do that if they're waiting to be asked, or if they don't have a wonderful end of life doula there to help them? What kind of little things could a family member do without to offer help, but still feel like they're not intruding in their life until they get asked? What are some things that a family member could do?
Yeah, no, great question. I think sometimes it's always providing easy meals. No one has time to grocery shop. No one has time to prepare a healthy meal. So some of it is just even the simple things like grocery shopping, just
Right.
have some groceries show up at the house because we don't
Right.
have time to get out to do that. Because a lot of times people can't be leaving their loved one alone for a long period of
Mhm.
time or at all. So some of
Right.
it is just, bringing over some orange juice and some, whatever is needed to have
Mhm.
something available in the fridge. And some of it is laundry because as
Mhm.
end of life, I know, again, this is kind of silly, but clean bed linens for that person or new pajamas to be, or washcloths. You're kind of going through those items more
Mhm.
frequently.
Mhm.
So it's as simple as just stepping in and doing some loads of laundry for them.
Mhm.
So something like that is always a great opportunity to be helpful.
Yeah. And would you say, I would tell my patients that, at times like this, everybody feels helpless.
Yes.
And everybody, you want to feel helpful, right? And so now's a good time to just kind of step up and do something. And I would tell the family and the caregiver, don't be afraid to ask for help
Well, and
because
Christina, I say don't even ask because they're
just
always
do
going to go,
it.
no, no,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
have groceries delivered. They're on your
Yeah.
front
Yeah.
porch. It's something you may use, you may not. I don't
Yeah.
know. Or, you know what? Put some laundry in a trash bag, put it on your front porch. I'll come
Yeah.
and take it to my house and do it, and it'll come
Yeah.
back folded. It doesn't
Right.
have to be even anything you ask because a lot of times people just
Yeah.
say, no, I got it. No,
Yep.
so you just go, it depends on obviously the closeness of the relationship with them, but
Right.
sometimes you just do it.
Yeah.
And I find that to be beneficial as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
That is awesome.
Um,
Very, very
yeah,
cool.
this has been such a wonderful conversation, Kim. I'm sure you
Mhm.
probably get that with
Oh,
everybody that you run across because it's so needed and it feels like there's such a stigma attached to it or misconceptions that
Yeah.
or it's just not something that we're supposed to talk about,
right.
and here it is. That's your job.
Yeah.
Well, and you're not in the space until you're in the space.
Right.
And,
Right.
it's a lot of times I just last week, 2 weeks ago, maybe supported an end of life case. And the daughter flew in from California and she ended up experiencing a horrible toothache. So I got her into the dentist the following day. And, that turned into working with them. And he was a veteran. So we had military honors at Jefferson Barracks National Cemetery. But knowing his family, working with them, I knew that having the song Guard and Guide, Lord, Guard and Guide the Men That Fly, because he was Air Force, sung
Mhm.
at Jefferson Barracks
Yeah.
for them. So I ended up arranging for a tenor to sing that solo, and it just provided so much comfort, but peaceful, and just put the extra special touches
Yeah.
on somebody's life, and being able to have that ending for the family as well.
I love
That's
it.
awesome.
Well,
Awesome.
Kim, we're going to come. We're going to go to a commercial now. We've got one of
Okay.
our sponsors, Mobility Tel. We're going to take a look at one of their ads, and we'll come back and talk to you a
Awesome.
little bit more and wrap up. Okay.
Sounds great. Thanks, ladies.
Uh-huh.
So as you can see, you can grab the loops, and with the weights, it's going to allow that towel to stay. You don't have to grasp the towel, you don't have to grab the towel.
Hey, it got me in time to take a drink of water. So
All right. Excellent. Very good. Yeah, absolutely. So we really appreciate you being here, Kim. And because it feels like the whole concept of end of life doula is kind of a new thing.
is.
It feels like,
Right.
and I'm so I bet it's probably not everywhere in the country yet.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No.
when I did my training through International End of Life Doula Association, abbreviated for INELDA. And with that, it's really big on the East and West Coast. There's a lot of California, a lot of New Jersey, Midwest, which is where we are. It's very far and few between.
Yeah.
So, you can go on and Google something like that, end of life care, or there's directories on INELDA. You can go on that website to find one. But
Okay, so that would, so somebody could go on there and find, is that kind of where you would register, or they would have some kind of a directory?
Exactly. They have a directory.
Okay.
Exactly. And you don't even have to, do a passcode or anything like that. There's just a directory you can put in with your location and where you have an ANELDA trained end-of-life doula.
Excellent. Well, I'll tell you what, Kim, for people that are in our area
Yes.
or online, can you tell our audience members how to get a hold of you or how they can find out more about you?
Absolutely. I am at comfortingtransitions.com. I do service the St. Louis and Metro East area, primarily O'Fallon, Edwardsville, Belleville, but I have supported numerous in the St. Louis area as well. Comfortingtransitions.com.
Excellent.
That is awesome.
I love it.
Awesome.
So, we really do appreciate you coming on here. This, like I said, this has been such a great conversation. And I'm sure we'll have more questions. We look like we had tons of questions in the comments. I was trying to get to them as we went along, but this is such an important topic that if you wouldn't mind kind of maybe afterwards going and answering any questions.
Absolutely.
That would be, we would really appreciate that.
Right.
And please make sure, so we just want to make sure that if you guys enjoy this content, to share it with your friends. If anybody that you know might need this, like it, share it,
Subscribe.
Subscribe.
Follow us.
Follow us. We would
go and like comfortingtransitions.com on Facebook as well.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. Absolutely.
Go there. This is on YouTube. It's also on LinkedIn. And it will be there evergreen, so you can go back and see it if you missed it live. So Kim, we really appreciate your time, and if you wouldn't mind sticking around after this.
Absolutely.
You guys, thanks for joining us on this episode of Engines Off, and we will see you in the next podcast.